Hello and welcome back for another episode of You Would Think. Just a little background for any new viewers. We are talking about the Lindsay Clancy case. Lindsay Clancy is the Massachusetts mother of 3 who strangled her 3 children and then jumped out of a second-story bedroom window, essentially paralyzing herself. Her defense is saying that she was suffering from a type of postpartum psychosis at the time and should not be held criminally responsible, while the prosecution obviously argues just the opposite, that no, she was fine, she's trying to say she was in psychosis to get away with murder. But if you've watched my previous videos or if you've been following the trial at all, you'll see that, the prosecution, I don't even think they know what their theory is at this point. So, that being said, full disclosure, I am not an attorney. I do not have a law degree. I'm not offering any legal advice. My degree is in crime scene technology and forensics. This is a trial channel. I enjoy watching trials and true crime cases, and I made this channel so that I could converse with you and get your perspective and just have, engaging conversations regarding some of these cases. So, please, if you have any comments or questions, put them down in the comment section so I may address them. And please like and subscribe so that I can continue to bring you content. And let's just get right into it. Okay. Day 15. Let me start by saying, I think that there are certain witnesses that should just be left alone, right? Certain family members, friends, just sometimes that there, are certain people that you just want to just leave them the hell alone. Well, on day 15, testimony began with Sue Clancy, Patrick Clancy's mother. And the prosecution didn't just do the opposite of leave her alone, but they did it in a spectacular fashion. At one point, when this woman is on the stand, grieving grandmother, she feels for her son. She loved Lindsay. She feels for Lindsay. She's just very distraught, obviously, by all of this. So the prosecution asked Clancy at one point if she is an active member in the Catholic Church, to which Clancy says yes. And then the prosecution proceeds to ask her, are you aware that murder is a mortal sin? Really? Really? As soon as sin left her mouth, the judge objected, and obviously rightfully so. They had a sidebar. I'm sure that she was chastised for that. That was a low blow, and I really didn't think that the prosecution could make themselves, look any worse than they already do, but damn, they did.
Oh, are you an active member in the Catholic Church?
Yes.
So you're aware that murder is considered a mortal sin?
Yeah, Counsel, could I see you over here?
So, when the defense gets to get up and have their opportunity to question her, they get some critical information from her. They establish that she's a labor and delivery nurse, and that she says that Lindsay was a very nurturing and loving mother. And she noted that in November of 2022, that Lindsay said she felt unwell. She had insomnia, no appetite, anxious, sad. At that point, the mother recommended to see nurse practitioner Julie Paul. And when Julie Paul retired, her care was transferred to nurse practitioner Gelada. And she also said Lindsay essentially was begging for help. And I don't think that's contested at this point. Then they introduced some text messages that were part of the large Celebrite extraction from Lindsay's phone, and kind of called it quits with Sue Clancy. So after that, the next witness was Dr. Lapasata via Zoom. Okay, so you may remember Dr. Lapasata if you followed the Karen Reed trial. She was one of the experts that testified to the wounds on John O'Keefe's arm. And, you know, she's very professional, knowledgeable, calm demeanor. I really liked, Dr. Lapasata's testimony. So I was looking forward to her testimony in this case. So after watching it, and, she appeared via Zoom, I did an entire video on only Dr. Lapasata's testimony. So for a little more in-depth look, into her testimony and the injuries and wounds of mainly Lindsay, and the wounds that she sustained to her spine, I would recommend if you go and watch the video that I made that focused exclusively on Dr. Lapasata's testimony. That being said, a few highlights. Before she was even beginning to testify, the prosecution objected to this drawing that was made. I believe that it was with an investigator and Dr. Lapasata, and it was meant to be an illustration or a bit of a roadmap, right, for lay people, and the jurors to be able to follow along with Dr. Lapasata's testimony. Of course, the prosecution objects, and ultimately the judge rules that pages 1, 2, and 3 cannot be shown, but 4, 5, and 6 can, which is fine because Kevin Reddington really wanted page 4, which was the illustration that we'll see the most of, in which it shows how Lindsay would have jumped out the window, how she would have landed on the ground, how far from the window to the ground, things like that. So if you're interested in that, there was some really great testimony, which is why I made a standalone video about it. So if you'll go back and you can check that out. The prosecution, they claim that the illustrations were misleading the jury, when what they were actually doing, like I said, was giving these lay people an illustration that was more digestible, in a way that they could use it to follow along with the doctor's testimony. And also her wounds. She also goes into the wounds on the children, and her and the prosecution get into this little back and forth regarding the exercise bands and if they were tied in a knot or just wrapped around their necks. Now, look, this part didn't make sense to me because if you'll remember and go back and watch day 2, when Patrick Clancy is on the stand, you'll hear him say that the exercise bands were tied in a knot and he had to untie the knot to get it off the child's neck.
I immediately got up and ran to the basement.
So when you come down those stairs that night, which direction did you go?
I immediately went left.
And when you went left, what did you see?
I saw Cora.
And how did she look?
She had a band around her neck.
And was that an exercise band?
Yeah.
And do you recall whether she was, what position she was in, whether face up or face down?
She's face down.
And when you saw her in that condition, what did you do?
I immediately ran over and tried to take the band off.
Were you able to get the band off?
Yeah.
And do you recall how you got the band off?
I think I untied it.
And when you say untied it, was it in a knot that you had to, put everything down and unknot it, or how was it tied?
I'm not sure I fully remember.
Do you recall describing it previously as when you initially tie your shoes but then don't do the bow?
Yeah, that sounds right.
Dr. Lapasata is saying that unconsciousness can occur within 10 to 20 seconds when the blood flow is restricted, especially to like the carotid artery in your neck. But that doesn't make a person dead. What makes a person dead is that whatever made them unconscious in the first place is if that mechanism is still in place, like a ligature, then the cells in the brain will continue to die and eventually the person will die. So this goes against the prosecution's theory that Lindsay would have had wrapped these bands around these children's necks and sat there and applied pressure for 4 to 5 minutes and then moving on to each child. And that's not at all what reality and science tells us. And it tells us that they were tied in a knot, and then she would go to the next child and do the same thing. And because those ligatures were not removed after the child lost consciousness, the child ultimately succumbed to death. They also got back in a tit for tat about manual strangulation in a previous case that Dr. Lapasata had testified in versus ligature strangulation. I don't know, just seemed very, I don't know, man, very strange.
Now, do you recall testifying previously in State of Rhode Island versus Kimberly Fry, case number W1/2010-0413A? Do you recall testifying previously in that case?
No, I don't.
Let me refresh your memory. It was a woman who had killed her 8-year-old daughter by asphyxia, and you testified.
Oh, yes, she started manual strangulation, yes.
Yeah, so ring a bell?
Yes.
Okay. And so you testified back in 2011 in that case, and you were asked if you have a very complete compression, strike that. You were asked, unconsciousness due to oxygenation can occur within 10 to 20 seconds. And you said if you have a very complete compression of the blood vessels of the neck, you can become unconscious within 10 to 20 seconds. And then you were asked, I'm just saying hypothetically, just strangulation alone is 10 to 20 seconds. And you said if it is effectively and continuously applied, like in a lateral vascular neck restraint, most times there is a struggle going on, so you can't quite get that. So in that case there, you didn't testify that it was 5 to 10 seconds. You testified that it was 10 to 20 seconds, and that if there's any struggling, it could be longer, correct?
Yes, but that case was...
Well, that was a yes or no question.
It's not a yes or no question. All right.
Defense can follow up.
Hold on. She's answered the question. And then we'll have a redirect if counsel would like to.
Well, I don't remember
Hold on,
what
Doctor.
I said.
Why don't you, Doctor, wait for a question.
You were also
I'm
asked
sorry.
in that same trial, doctor, the question put to you in that trial was, but once that unconsciousness set in, you agree with me that there had to have been a consistent application of pressure, either suffocation, strangulation, or compressions of the chest for 2 to 3 more minutes continuously while the child was unconscious, correct? And you answered, I think that's a fair statement. And the question was, you said that before yourself, correct? And you answered yes. And then the question was, I'm asking your opinion, and you said, the question was, after Condie became unconscious, after 2 to 3 minutes of continuous application of one of those 3, and you answered correct. Is that right?
I have no memory of that. I'm sure you're reading it correctly.
Well, you have memory of your medical knowledge, correct?
Sure, I have memory of my medical knowledge.
And so at that point in time, in 2011, you testified that you would have to strangle someone 10 to 20 seconds at least to unconsciousness, and then you would have to continue to strangle them for 2 to 3 minutes for death to occur. And you said correct. Is that still your medical knowledge?
That's a different case. That was not ligature. That was a manual.
So either way, you're talking about the compression of the neck causing a loss of oxygen and blood, correct?
I'll allow this question. Go ahead.
Yeah, there are many ways that can occur, and the way the pressure is applied is very important in understanding how long it takes to become unconscious. These are the children here were the victims of what we call ligature strangulation. The Fry case that it's coming back to me a little now, that was a manual strangulation and also a body compression, which is a totally different type of asphyxia.
I mean, you were asked about that in that case, and you were asked, but once unconsciousness has set in, you agree with me that there has to be consistent application of pressure, either suffocation, strangulation, or compressions for 2 to 3 minutes more, and you answered correct. So not all 3. You said either one of those could cause death after 3 minutes, correct?
Yeah, just if you could rephrase that question.
You were asked, but once unconsciousness set in, you agree with me that there had to have been consistent application of pressure, either suffocation, strangulation, or compressions of the chest for 2 to 3 minutes more continuously while they're unconscious. And you said, I think that's a fair statement. So that's what you said, correct?
Yes, in order to become dead, brain dead, you need the physiology is that you become unconscious within 5 to 10 seconds, and then you're unconscious, but that's not dead. Then that continued constriction of the blood flow has to be still continuously applied for the brain to die.
Correct. So
that is what happens, and that's what happened to the Clancy children. The ligatures were wrapped around. They went unconscious in 5 to 10, maybe 20 seconds, probably less than 20 seconds because it was a ligature, not a manual strangulation. So it was immediately compressed, unconsciousness within 10 seconds, and then death within 5 to 10 minutes after that.
with continuous pressure, pressure around the neck.
Yes, because this is a ligature strangulation.
Thank you.
Not manual.
Okay, so when you're talking about ligature strangulation as opposed to manual strangulation, tell us in your mind what that means.
Well, they're very, very different. Manual strangulation means that somebody's used their hand and they've pressed either side of the neck. Okay, that the hand is manual strangulation. Strangulation means that you have stopped the blood flow that comes out of your brain and the carotid artery continues to pump oxygenated blood into your brain, but it can't drain out through the jugular veins. So with continuous pressure, then the blood can't get in because it can't flow out. It's kind of like stopping up a pipe. And then so you go unconscious within 5 to 10 seconds, but then with continued pressure, your brain dies. So the difference between manual and ligature is that manual can be kind of an off and on thing. You may put, you have a jugular vein on either side of your neck. So if you're using a hand, you might compress one greater than the other. You might let go. The person that you're trying to strangle may struggle and remove your hand a little bit. So it's a very different sequence of events to end up with brain death and asphyxia. Whereas wrapping a round loop resistance band, which is a ligature, immediately compresses those vessels. There's no coming off, there's no putting back on. So it's a very complete, one-time, immediate, non-varying compression.
And then, the prosecution's been throwing a few little hissy fits, and I think that's because they can clearly feel they're losing this case. This was one of the most unorganized prosecutions that I have seen, at least lately. Put in the comments what you think. What do you think about the prosecution in this case? And while we're at it, if you'd like to put what you think about the defense. I personally think the defense is doing an excellent job. Kevin Reddington is an excellent trial attorney, and he has done nothing but try to move this trial along by showing the facts and evidence that go toward the actual charge. And I really, really do appreciate his lawyering. So put in the comments what you think. I would really, really like to know. And moving right along. So like I said, the hissy fits with the prosecution. The prosecution gets frustrated when she starts talking about the, ligature strangulation. And she abruptly walks over to the table where there's, I suppose, just all the physical evidence. She grabs the bag that had the exercise bands in it. She puts gloves on. She dramatically takes the exercise band out of the bag. She walks over to an object on the table and she wraps it around it and says, "Is this what you're saying happened? Because you can see that when I wrap it and then I walk away from it, it comes undone." But again, Patrick even said on day 2, he found them with the exercise bands in a knot around their neck. And he had to untie the knot to get it off their neck. So not sure what was going on there. Is what it is, right? After Dr. Lapasata's testimony, they take a short break. And then we come to Dr. Condie. Dr. Condie is a clinical and forensic psychiatrist associated with Harvard. And it shows. This man was articulate, knowledgeable, and just knew what he was talking about. And if he didn't, then he definitely has the bumper sticker of "fake it till you make it." Dr. Condie, like Lapasata, are defense witnesses. Because the defense at this point is now putting on their case in chief. And something I also found a bit comical was the prosecution objected to this witness, alleging that it would be accumulative evidence. Like, they didn't just spend the better part of 3 weeks putting on unnecessary witnesses and extracting a bunch of unnecessary details out of them. And the defense never objected, even though he was very frustrated with the slow pace of the trial because of all of the unnecessary evidence. So I thought it was a little funny that their objection to the specific witness was accumulative evidence. Of course, lost that objection, and the judge allowed the testimony. During the defense's questioning, they established Dr. Condie has experience treating psychosis, also worked in the field for over 40 years. It was revealed that he said that the documents he reviewed to prepare for his testimony, unlike the ER doctor, Miss Donahue, who couldn't recall a damn thing. He said he reviewed Dr. Gelato and Tufts' medical records, the Bregman's Women's Health records, McLean records, and the South Shore Hospital records. Another thing I kind of thought just made me kind of chuckle was when he was asked what he thought of Dr. Tufts' records. And he hesitates slightly, and he uses the word sparse, that they were sparse, saying there were lots of check boxes, but not a lot of sentences or notes about the session.
Now, did you have a chance to review Dr. Tufts' medical records?
Yes, I did.
Can you describe them for us, please?
They are somewhat sparse, and there are many check boxes in the records, but not a great deal of sentences that describe what was done during sessions.
He was aware that all of her appointments were telehealth. They talked about Zoloft, which is generally prescribed for anxiety and depression. However, in some people, it can also cause increasing anxiety. We established that Lindsay did not actually take the medication for a few weeks because she was still breastfeeding at that time. But when she did, the amount was changed from 25 milligrams to 50 milligrams. And Lindsay had a very, very bad reaction to that. Apparently including one time when she didn't sleep for like 48 hours. That's crazy. He established that it usually takes between 2 to 3 or 4 to 6 weeks for a medication to work. And look, me and like many of you, I'm sure, have dealt with mental health in some way, shape, or form, and have been told before that, hey, this medication may take a few weeks to work. So that's kind of something that's known. But Lindsay kept telling her providers that she was not feeling better after just a few days. But instead of the providers who should have known better, instead of her providers saying, no, you need to take this for the right amount of time so we can see if it actually works. I mean, unless it was, like Zoloft causing her to be crazy after a couple of days. Instead of just saying, oh, you don't like this one? Okay, here, try this one. Oh, here, try this. Oh, yeah, no, let's just take this and fill it and go live your life. Like, come on, man. That's you know what? That is why they are involved in the civil cases that they are involved in. I'll tell you what. And let me just say really quickly on a side note. I would also like to know in the comments, if you could please tell me, how do you feel about this case bringing mental health and women's health to the forefront? I can't remember another case that has done that, at least recently. And I personally think it is a good thing and overdue. And I would love to know what you think. So please tell me in the comments whether you think it is a good thing that this case is putting women's health and mental health essentially on trial. All right. So the provider should have been like, hey, you need to take this, you know, instead of just going, oh, you don't like it? Okay, here's some more stuff. Yeah, that's a haphazard way of doing things. And, you know, we've seen what happened. He does explain psychosis in a little bit of a different way than we've heard so far.
Practitioner Julie Paul reported that Lindsay stated that she was disassociated, that she was not in touch with reality. Do you remember that?
Yes.
And what is that a symptomology? Is that a symptom of psychosis, to be disassociated and not in touch with reality?
It certainly can be. Dissociation it can mean that people feel like things around them are not real.
Right, and that's a pretty serious feeling to have, right?
It is.
And that's pretty common, unfortunately, with women that have postpartum psychosis, right?
It certainly can be, yes.
And what are the other symptomologies of postpartum psychosis, sir?
Well, psychosis in general just means a lack of understanding of what's real as opposed to what is not. So a person with psychosis can have delusions, which are fixed false beliefs. They could believe that, for example, they have been told by God to do something. Okay. They can also have hallucinations at times.
What kind of hallucinations?
Most people have auditory hallucinations, not visual hallucinations.
Hearing. Is that correct? Auditory is hearing, right?
Yes.
Okay, as opposed to what?
As opposed to visual hallucinations?
Visual. And in the course of reviewing the medical records, did you see that, in fact, that Lindsay had auditory, no visual hallucinations, but auditory voices?
At times, she reported that she had heard a voice, yes.
Okay. Do you recall that as the time went by that she, in December, do you remember seeing in the medical records that she was relating that she was heavy, that she couldn't get out of bed, that she couldn't bathe, that she couldn't react, she couldn't love, she couldn't feel? Do you remember any of that from looking at the medical records?
Yes, those are all phrases that I recall from the medical records.
They were all coming from her, right?
Yes.
To the doctors.
Yes.
That would be Dr. Tufts and then Dr. Gelada. Is that right?
Nurse Gelada.
Sorry, nurse practitioner Gelada.
And he also goes into detail and explains about serotonin and what happens when you take an SSRI and what happens to the brain, as well as he talks about hormones and after a woman has had a baby and the postpartum blues to postpartum depression and some of the symptomology of that. I'm going to watch a short video on that.
Did it block or in some fashion affect your brain?
It's a little complicated to explain, but
Let's
serotonin...
explain it. Tell the jury what serotonin means and what happens when you take an SSRI, please.
Okay, serotonin in this sense is a neurotransmitter. The brain is a relatively complicated place. It has about 86 billion nerve cells. They've got thousands of connections to each other, but they're not like the wires in your house where you put two pieces of wire together, twist the copper, and then put a nut on that. Nerves don't touch. They go close to each other, but there's a space between them, and that's called the synaptic cleft. One nerve secretes a neurotransmitter into the synaptic cleft, and it moves over to the next nerve in line where there's a receptor. Serotonin does that in the synaptic cleft, but it's also taken back up by the nerve that secreted it so it's reuptaked. So a selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor slows down the reuptake of serotonin, prolonging its activity in the synaptic cleft, which causes the next nerve in line to be activated. I'm sorry that it's so complicated. So that's what serotonin is doing, and that's what a reuptake inhibitor does.
When a woman is pregnant, or if a defendant submits to a psychological tests such as the MMPI and the interpretation by a psychologist of the results of that test. If the person wanted to pretend that they were suffering from a disease, a defect, would that test ostensibly be able to tell the psychologist that?
Yes.
Was it MMPI administered by the government's doctors on this case to Lindsay?
Yes.
Did that have a K-scale as to whether or not she was lying or exaggerating or malingering or trying to fake that she had some disease or defect?
Yes, it had a case.
And what were the results of the government's doctors' tests on the Minnesota multifaceted personality as it relates to the K-scale?
Objection.
Yeah, can I see counsel over here?
Let me just, as we say, lead you a little bit. Yes or no answers would be fine. Were you aware that a test was administered by the government's doctor, I think it was Dr. Helbrin, to Lindsay Clancy in the course of the government's evaluation?
Yes.
And did you consider the results of and the interpretation of that test as part of your opinion for this jury?
Yes.
And to that extent, as you discuss whether or not somebody is faking or somebody is exaggerating, do you have an opinion based upon your review of the discovery in the case to a reasonable degree of medical certainty as to whether or not Lindsay Clancy, in the course of that evaluation, was malingering or lying or exaggerating?
Yes, I do.
Tell the jury.
My opinion in the testing of Ms. Clancy regarding the MMPI was that
Objection.
Just the doctor, your opinion, doctor.
she was not faking. There was no evidence of any malingering. She presented as an honest citizen.
Okay.
One more thing he testifies to that I forgot to mention earlier in his statement was the blood test debacle. If you'll remember, while Jennifer Tufts and Dr. Gelada had taken the stand, the defense asked Dr. Tufts if they did any blood tests to test Lindsay's thyroid, of many other things. And Dr. Tufts said that blood work and those results would not have yielded anything of value. And that just shows her inexperience, I think, because it's very clear and well documented as well. The thyroid has a lot to do hormonally and with our mind and look that up. That's an interesting read. So, yeah, they did not do any blood tests. And you would think that there would be like a standard blood test looking for certain things when a patient is coming to you and explaining certain things, that way you can either aid in resolving those issues or maybe rule something out. Who knows? Maybe as a result of this case taking the spotlight, maybe they will, evolve and make a blood test. A standard blood test. That would be very helpful to the patients for numerous reasons. All being said, I thought he was very knowledgeable, professional, and a very likable witness. And the end of the day of day 15 was Dr. Zeizel, the psychiatrist who treated Lindsay. Dr. Zeizel testified about the symptomology that Lindsay was complaining about and presenting at the time he saw her. He dispelled the rumor that he let Lindsay use his cell phone to call Pat and that he planted the idea of the I was hearing voices comment from Lindsay to Pat in her head during that call, like it was alleged. A little more background in education was provided, and then court ended for the day. So a lot to digest there. I really would like to hear your thoughts, especially on the points that we made earlier in the video. And I thank you so much for joining me for another episode of You Would Think. Please make sure to like and subscribe so I can bring you more content. not only the recaps, the daily recaps of this trial, but other trials as well, including some upcoming trials. Wink, wink. In other words, you have a great night. Thank you so much.